Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A historic day in Washington. That is the House of Representatives votes to approve a path forward for the impeachment inquiry, that by approving the rules that will govern it. Now, this is only the fourth time in U.S. history that we have gone down this path, and we're going to spend the entire hour on this subject. Now, we want to make you a part of this evening's program. We open up our toll-free lines right now to you. You see the number there on your screen, 888-766-2428. The toll-free lines, as I said, open right now, so be a part of this hour. Now, would you have voted to support the impeachment inquiry? 435 congresspeople had to make that decision today, and we're going to ask you, if you were on the Capitol today, tasked with this very, very serious decision, which way would you have gone? Again, we'll get to your reaction shortly. Now, also over the next hour, a former federal prosecutor, he'll join us to take a look at the case against President Trump. We'll also show you the debate on Capitol Hill over impeachment and how each side is drawing its battle lines. Plus, the very latest on the hearings that are ongoing, plus new information about that now infamous call between President Trump and Ukraine. But we start tonight with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi explaining how it will work and what's at stake.
Today, the House takes the next step forward as we establish the procedures for open hearings conducted by the House Intelligence Committee so that the public can see the facts for themselves. This resolution ensures transparency, advancing public disclosure of deposition transcripts and outlining the procedures for the transfer of evidence to the Judiciary Committee to use in its proceedings. It enables effective public hearings, setting out procedures for the questioning of witnesses and continuing the precedent of giving the minority the same rights in questioning witnesses as the majority. What is at stake in all of this is nothing less than our democracy.
Not surprisingly, Republicans don't see things the same way, not even close. They've been complaining about the process now for weeks. Here's the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy voicing another GOP talking point about impeachment.
But today is more than the fairness of an impeachment process. It is about the integrity of our electoral process. Democrats are trying to impeach the president because they are scared they cannot defeat him at the ballot box. That's not my words. That's the words of my colleagues from the other side of the aisle that has offered impeachment 3 different times. This impeachment is not only an attempt to undo the last election, it is an attempt to influence the next one as well.
And just minutes after the House voted, the president responded, where else but Twitter. Quote, the greatest witch hunt in American history. Plus, the White House also releasing a statement. I'll read a portion of it for you. Quote, the president has done nothing wrong. The Democrats know it. Instead of focusing on pressing issues that impact real families, the Democrats are choosing every day to waste time on a sham impeachment, a blatantly partisan attempt to destroy the president. With today's vote, Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats have done nothing more than enshrine unacceptable violations of due process into House rules. That is unfair, unconstitutional, and fundamentally un-American. Now, today's vote was one of many major developments on the impeachment front, and for more of those details on the vote and also everything else, let's throw the kitchen sink here at him, Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent.
Well, Rich, we'll start that kitchen sink with the vote itself, which was almost entirely on party lines. Republican turned independent Justin Amash voted yes. 2 Democrats voted no. One of them is from New Jersey. Freshman Jeff Van Drew voted no. He represents a swing district in South Jersey that Trump won by 5 points in 2016. So today's vote sets the rules for how the impeachment process will proceed. Here's what we know and what we don't know tonight. The substantive hearings will be run by the House Intelligence Committee. That puts Adam Schiff in charge of the process. Those hearings will be televised. The GOP can subpoena witnesses and documents with the blessing of the chairman or with a vote of the committee, and the House Intel depositions will continue to be taken in private. As for those hearings, the chairman and the ranking member, that's Schiff and Devin Nunes, will be able to ask up to 90 minutes of questions to witnesses instead of the normal 5 minutes. They can also have staff members ask questions if they choose. Other members get the regular 5-minute window, and each party's lawyers can also ask up to 45 minutes of uninterrupted questions. The transcripts from the depositions, the ones that have already been taken and the ones that are still to come, will be released. The House Intelligence Committee will assemble a final report, send that to the Judiciary Committee. It's at Judiciary where it gets debated, and then they vote on articles of impeachment. Judiciary at that point can also hold hearings with provisos for the GOP and the president to ask questions and call witnesses, again, if the chair believes that they are acting in good faith. These rules, by the way, are all consistent with the House rules during the Nixon and Clinton impeachments. So we know a lot more about how the process will work than we did on Monday, but there's still a lot that we don't know. Like the time frame, when it all begins and ends. We don't even know when the first public hearing will be held at this point. And there's a good chance that senators running for president will get stuck in an impeachment trial as we approach Iowa and New Hampshire. We also still don't know the scope of the inquiry. Will it focus just on Ukraine or cast a wider net? We don't know if the House will consider obstruction of justice or obstruction of Congress through this process, or if the White House will actually cooperate more or less, or how the courts may rule on impeachment issues after this vote. Now, other than the House vote, there were also new developments on the impeachment front today. Tim Morrison was today's only deposition. He had been the Russia and Europe guy on the National Security Council until he resigned last night. Morrison reportedly said he thought Trump was seeking a quid pro quo from Ukraine, confirming what 5 other people have testified to, but also that he was on their call and didn't believe that he heard anything on that call that he thought was illegal. Lots of anticipation for next week's depositions, including these guys on Monday. Mike Ellis and John Eisenberg are attorneys for the National Security Council and were fingered by Alex Vindman this week as the ones who rushed the readout of the Ukraine phone call into that classified White House server. And on Thursday, the committee could hear from former National Security Advisor John Bolton in what, if it happens, would be a wild card of a deposition, because we honestly don't know what he would say or the approach he would take. Rich, let's send it back to you.
All right, Andrew. Listen, it's unfortunately we're at the stage where everybody goes in their corners. It's the vote today reflected it. It's extremely siloed on partisan lines. But I just thought some of the arguments were less than genuine in that the Democrats have been dying to do this from jump. Yes, a few Democrats weren't happy that Trump was elected, to put it mildly, but I remember a certain senator from Kentucky who said his first goal the day after Obama was elected was to get him unelected. So these things are not uncommon. However, Nancy Pelosi did not want to go down this road. She resisted Democrats when the Mueller report came out to say, no, there's not an appetite for this. This is not where we want to go down. Let's do it at the ballot box. But only after the voluminous fire hose of people coming forward that were connected to that Ukraine call and all the warning signs that they raised about it, were we put in a situation where she felt that it was. And I should mention, if you believe the polls, the majority of the American public not only want an inquiry here, but a removal of the president. So as if that this is some partisan witch hunt, as I've heard often, isn't reflective, I believe, of reality. But here we are. This is going to be, from a calendar standpoint, a very interesting dance. You don't want this to bleed well into 2020. I don't see how it's avoidable. I know they'd love to wrap this up by, Thanksgiving. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either, especially because the major question of how wide the scope of this process hasn't been answered yet, and that depends on where the evidence takes them. So we don't know if there's more to it. I mean, let's say we're close to being done with the investigative process related to Ukraine. Maybe Bolton is the final one that we need to hear from, or there might be a few after that. But then you still have to have the Intelligence Committee write up a report. They're going to have public hearings on the Intelligence Committee also. Send that report to Judiciary. Judiciary has hearings. They vote on impeachment. I mean, I don't think there's any chance this gets done by Thanksgiving. I think it's much more likely, but still not certain, that they can get it done by Christmas. So yes, Iowa is in early February. New Hampshire is a little bit later in February. Super Tuesday is in early March. It's entirely possible that, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders can't get out of the Senate, because once the full House votes impeachment, the Senate is required to stay in session 6 days a week to have the trial.
Now, Republicans have been banging the drum from the beginning that this has not been transparent, that these are hidden meetings. I should remind everyone, it wasn't just a few Democrats in a room with these witnesses. there was Republicans. The committee is populated, almost half of them, by Republicans. It's reflective of the makeup, obviously, of Congress, of the House. That said, who do you think is going to look back on this and say, now that we turn the camera lights on here, now the world's going to see it? From everything you hear from people in the room that have heard some of this testimony, they believe it's even more damning than the leaks have reported so far. First guess for me, are Republicans going to regret getting what they asked for?
Depends on the effectiveness of the witnesses who are called to testify in the public hearing. Let's use Robert Mueller as an example, who is an unimpeachable witness in terms of his ability and how he's thought. His report was hard to read, and his appearance before Congress was underwhelming, to say the least. And any energy that might have come for further investigation or impeachment died the day that he gave the testimony before Congress. If the names that we've heard so far, the Bill Taylors or the Vindmans, aren't catching with the public in the same way in these public hearings, then I'm sure Democrats will be the ones who regret advancing this.
But conversely, if those two guys that you just mentioned, who have decorated military service, who've been public service their whole lives, who, as much as there's been attempts to discredit them, come off as, glorified Boy Scouts, as much as they at least seem to at this point, it's going to be hard to call them partisan hacks.
It certainly will. I also think that the tipping point here might be some of the big. What does John Bolton say? Does Rick Perry testify to try to save himself and tell what he knows? If bigger names who people can feel a little more respect for or feel like, I'm getting it from the horse's mouth, start to turn on Trump, who knows where this thing is?
All right, Andrew. Now, let's play for our audience some more sound from today's debate from the floor of the House. And let's start off with a very prominent player in all of this, Adam Schiff.
I rise in strong support, but I do not take any pleasure in the events that have made this process necessary. I rise in strong support of the resolution, but I do so with an understanding that the task before us is a solemn one. How each member of this chamber approaches the vote this morning and the days and weeks ahead may be the most important service as members of Congress we will ever pay to the country and Constitution that we all love and have pledged to defend.
Here's another name you're going to see a lot of, Jamie Raskin. He, a Democrat from Maryland.
The President of the United States has violated the Constitution by placing his political interests above the interests of the country, thereby putting both our democracy and the nation's security in jeopardy. In light of this evidence, the House of Representatives must fully investigate. We have sworn a sacred oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We will honor our oath by countering all high crimes and misdemeanors committed against the American people and our Constitution.
Finally, I'm going to wrap up here with House Republican Whip Steve Scalise and just listen to where he and theoretically his party are willing to go.
This is unprecedented. It's not only unprecedented, this is Soviet-style rules. Maybe in the Soviet Union, you do things like this, where only you make the rules, where you reject the ability for the person you're accusing to even be in the room, to question what's going on, for anybody else to call witnesses, when only one person has the right to call witnesses.
As I say, it always comes back to Russia. Anyway, coming up next, we have been talking about the steady stream of witnesses who have been backing up the whistleblower's account of the call with Ukraine and even going further. The inquiry, it's just starting. After the break, we'll get to not only your phone calls, but we'll hear from a former federal prosecutor who will join us to take a look at the case the Dems are building and where we're heading next.